live, about to be live, and about to start our program with the lighting of this candle. If I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. Those are the words of Cindy Callett that we start this program with. I wonder if either Tariq or Nassim are with us. I'm just scrolling through to see if by any chance they submitted recorded music. They could not play together. They recorded in two different places the music of cello and percussion from Tariq and Nassim, which we will start again, if I can find it, with the second piece, which is called Sarab, meditative instrumental piece of music composed by Palestinian composer that I just mentioned, Simon Shaheen, from Berklee College of Music and from the world, renowned composer and oud player. We will cue up this piece.
Two ideas, and I took this idea and I started, as we started like drawing this idea and discuss it, and we made big posters. I can show it to you, and we went to the administrative office here at Laji to test the democracy that we have here. So if you have your place to express your opinion, when you express your opinion, what kind of challenges you receive, and are you ready to fight?
Some music of Tarek Rantizi on percussion and cello, Nassim Al-Atrash. We're just really honored to have the two of them in recorded version. It should have been video too, but for some reason, I think it might have something to do with this thing called QuickTime Player, which suddenly Adobe stopped supporting. I'm just talking trash that I've heard about. I don't know, but we will continue to hear the audio of these two remarkable players, students of Simon Shaheen. The words of Clarence Skinner, the founder of Community Church in 1920. We are 101 years old. Out of the world's wide ways we come to this, our house of fellowship and aspiration. Here may the evils which beset us be banished by the power of justice. The fears that haunt us be overcome by fresh insights. The doubts that drive us be dissolved into finer faith. Here, each in our own way, yet together, let us for a brief time look into the mysteries of life's beginning, the source out of which the endless eons roll and countless lives emerge, and with renewed hope, search through this maddening maze of things to find again life's aims and meaning, and above all, its glory. A little bit of church news and announcements. I want to let you all know that we have a new newsletter that just came out. Thank you, Crystal Rollins Jackson, our artistic director and office manager. It reviews 2 months of programs that are upcoming, starting with the first one, which is today. Hi, Nidal, there he is. And I will be introducing him pretty soon. And 2 months worth of programs and some remarkable things. I'll just tell you about some of the topics we are going to be talking about. The human right to housing, COVID's effect on education and family life, the W.E.B. Du Bois address featuring Margaret Kimberly of Black Agenda Report, Creativity is Ageless, talking about oral histories and storytelling with Susan Pearlstein. Amilcar Antonio Barreto, talking about Puerto Rico. He's a professor at Northeastern. Ben Norton from the Gray Zone and the Moderate Rebels podcast, talking about US imperialism, the Latin American left, and liberation theology. Our own activist hero, John Bach, a Quaker from the Friends meeting in Cambridge, talking about peacemaking and jailbreaks, liberation in captivity. We also have in March, on the anniversary of the death of Rachel Corrie, we have a showing of Abby Martin's film, Gaza Fights for Freedom. And we will have our video act together by then, I promise. I'm sorry you didn't get to see Nassim and Tarek playing their instruments. We will hear more from them as we move along. I want to tell you that we also last week had a showing of a film from Cuba, documentary filmmaker Cray Novick. We unfortunately weren't able to show it on the YouTube live, and some people called in and were disappointed with that. There were contractual reasons with PBS. It's showing on PBS now, that we couldn't show it on YouTube live. But if you would like to have the link and password, Cray has told me that that's fine with him. And send us an email, comchurch@gmail.com, and we will get you that link to see those remarkable windows into the life of Cuba in this day and age, recent footage. That's Cray Novick's film. I want to tell you about our fiscal meeting, which is coming up. First, just that I have this whole pile of envelopes that were response from from the last newsletter fundraiser that we did, and we thank you all for the contributions. I haven't sent you all the thank you notes. They're still on the desk here, but it's by way of telling you that we have our fiscal meeting. It's an annual ritual, not fun, but we hammer out our budget and we get you, our congregation, to approve the budget. And that meeting is on February 21st at 1 p.m., right after the Sunday that features educator Regina Robinson. So join us on February 21st. Also want to tell you that we have a congregational Zoom retreat, and that is on Saturday, March 13th. And we will be talking about this building, about the future of this building, and the use possibilities and options for the rest of this building. We have a beloved tenant that's called Theater Offensive, with its 10 wonderful employees that are leaving. Unfortunately, they've been with us for 9 years, and they are going virtual. And that means we will have a third and fourth floor possibilities for another tenant or for the church taking up that space. We also have the fifth floor, which holds our archives. So that will be on March 13th at noon. More details to come by email and in this newsletter. If you'd like a copy of the newsletter in paper form, send us your address in the chat or by email, and we will send it to you, or give us your email address and we will send you the virtual version of the same. I want to talk about one more event that happens on March 7th. And that is the memorial for beloved Bob Datilio. Robert Datilio had a 50-year relationship with Community Church of Boston. Bob is probably the world's foremost authority scholar on the Sacco and Vanzetti case, which, as you know, we are deeply intertwined with. Sacco and Vanzetti, Italian anarchists executed in 1927, right near the beginning of our history, and we were very much involved in their defense, and they since have become our martyr patron saints, if you will. And Bob carried this enormous knowledge about that case and about the aftermath of that case, and also about early Italian working class anarchism. And he passed, and he was by himself. But after the news of his passing, I have sort of found out the magnificence of the variety of his interests and his friendships in the world of scholarship, history, the Italian-American community, the arts, music, dance. His wife was a dancer with the Boston Ballet, and in the world of classical music, he was just a wonderful fellow, and we will have a fitting tribute to him when we can have a physical tribute. His ashes will be spread, and we will have a physical meeting. Among those who will be speaking will be former Governor Michael Dukakis, who also was deeply interested in the Sacco and Vanzetti case, and also Judge Peter Agnes of the Supreme Judicial Court will be joining us as well. That memorial is on March 7th, and you can watch out for more news about that. This morning, we set our gaze on Palestine. And as an introduction to the next music piece, I want to tell you about two things. I already mentioned the Abby Martin documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom, which we are showing on March 16th, with the anniversary of the death of of Rachel Corrie, who we awarded our Sacco Vanzetti Award posthumously in 2003, soon after she was killed by a caterpillar that was destroying a home in Gaza. So we will show that film, and we will have also participating Abbey Martin, the remarkable young journalist who made the film, who was at the Great March of Return and took some really disturbing, but it can't hide the truth about the atrocity that was committed there. And that's on March 16th. I want to mention also something that was really remarkable, and I hope you will look this up. And it is a website that is called We Are Not Numbers, wearenotnumbers.org. And what it is writers from Gaza who, young writers mostly, who are teamed up with what they call mentors here in the US and Canada. And these mentors work with them on writing, and the writing is presented on this website. Another thing, I read several of them, and it was just a really remarkable experience being on that website. Another thing they offer, which I haven't done yet, is a virtual tour of Gaza. And I can hardly wait to have some personal tour guide take me through the streets of Gaza to some sites and to see what is there, both in all its elegance and its deep, tragic disaster. So that's by introduction to the next piece by Tarek and Nassim. I will work hard to find it, and it is called Sarab. Sarab. I am such a elegant host here. This is called Takasim Bambi, an instrumental improvisation guided by the traditional framework of the makam system, played over a rhythm called Bambi. Takasim Bambi. I had the wrong one queued up. Here we go.
We can't hear it.
Can you hear it? Nassim Al-Atrash and Tarek Rantisi. Thank you. Tarek is with us on the call, and I don't know, Tarek, if you would like to tell us a little bit more about that piece or about yourselves.
Hey, good morning, Dean. Hello, everybody. We're
for this music, and I was thinking, Tarek, that I could also make you co-host, and maybe you would be more successful at showing the video than I did for the next piece, which will be after we hear from Nidal.
Unfortunately, I'm on my phone and I'm not in my at the house, so I don't have access to the videos. I would love to, and it's sad that you can't show the videos, but I guess the audio will do. Well, thank you for having us part of this event. And Nassim and I are both Palestinians who live in the United States. I think we came here like 12 years ago, and we studied at Berklee College of Music, and we do a lot of Arabic and world music, and as well as world jazz. This music was like we chose 4 selections of the first one that you heard, which is Sama'i Bayati. Sama'i is like a musical form that is shared in the Arab world and Turkey, and it has this repetitive kind of refrain melody that comes. It's the closest to it is that we can think of it in Western music is a rondo form. And it's the unfamiliar thing of the Sama'i, which means listening, is that it rests on a 10-beat cycle, musical. It's different than like if we think in 4/4 or the generic music. Middle Eastern music and Arabic music has rhythms that can go up to 174 beats per cycle, and for specific songs and specific poetry. And the maqam system is a different system that is used. It's a bit different than the Western classical, at least, music system that we're kind of familiar with. And the maqam system has something that we call microtones, which is like small semitones or small tones that live in between. If you think about like a piano, you see, you have the white key and the neighboring black key. So microtones is like, if you imagine a piano, you can see in between them a red key or a blue key or a green key, and it depends on the region, it depends on the country, and it depends on the context on how this music is played. So this is like a brief introduction about how the Middle Eastern Arabic music is kind of based on a kind of different system than the harmonic system that we're used to in the Western classical music. And some of the other selections that you heard like the Bambi Taqasim on Bambi Taqasim is a genre of like free improvisation. This one is not free. It's kind of an improvisation that follows how the maqam work, because each maqam has a certain way of we approach it in a certain way. And again, it's more, it has a structure of but in between those structures, let's say from you have A and B, what happens between A and B is kind of up to the player to reach those 2 points, to simplify. And you'll hear other compositions, Sarab, which is a meditative composition, which will become after Nidal does his thing, which is more of a meditative piece. And you'll end with a Palestinian music medley of folk tunes of not just only, Palestine and Levantine region, basically.
All right. Thank you, Tarek.
Thank you for having me.
And there's nothing else we can give our daughters and sons.
We
want them to have faith to go forward with heartfelt bravery without being sure of what they will find.
I don't know where that's coming from, but hey, Charlie, could you mute everybody? Somebody else's audio. I want to just recognize a couple people who I see who are joining us, just some remarkable activists around Palestine. Pat Westwater Jung, thank you and welcome. We're just so honored to have you with us. Nancy Murray, same. Gaza, the issue of mental health in Gaza. And Susan Nye, my dear friend and partner in many different things, both El Salvador and Middle East and Palestine. So thank you for being here. It's just a pleasure to have Nidal join us this morning. I'm going to quick read this, but mostly I want to say that just the notion of doing this kind of work under the conditions of a brutal occupation is just such an inspiration. I think of the likes of Mazen, who spoke here, Mazen Kumsia, doing a natural history museum and the research and science in the midst of an occupation, or musical endeavors, or like Nidal does, raising funds for water projects and for agriculture in a refugee camp in the middle of a bigger refugee camp is just so remarkable, and I'll never cease to be amazed. And that's why I say it's just an honor to have you here. I have walked the 1 for 3 water walk twice, and it's just such a wonderful thing that you have done there. And in fact, I won't even read it. I'll let you all read it and just say hello to Nidal, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dean, and thank you all for being here this morning. I hope you and your family and loved ones are doing well in these strange times, and I hope we all keep others in mind, keep others who are less fortunate than us here in the country and elsewhere in the world, and just do our best and what we can to help them in respect and dignity, which is very, very, very important. So I am Nidal Al-Azraq. I am a Palestinian refugee, originally from a village called Al-Qabu, that my family was displaced in 1948, from 1948, and settled in Bethlehem city in the West Bank to become refugees, lived in Aida Refugee Camp. This is where I was born and raised. Unfortunately, I will be only speaking about the West Bank situation in regards to water. I cannot speak about the situation in Gaza, which is much, much worse than the situation in the West Bank. And the reason for that is because I believe due to the complications and the ongoing developments on the situation there, I cannot be reporting accurately about the situation in Gaza because I'm not from there and I cannot be there. And it will be great to host people actually from Gaza who live the situation to tell us about the situation there. But I'll do my best to report on the ongoing situation in the West Bank, especially in regard to water theft and land theft in the West Bank. I'm going to start by quickly taking the first 5 minutes to give us a little bit of information about the complexity and the restrictions in the West Bank, and then showing a minute and a half reports about one of the villages that's been actually, as we are speaking, it's been displaced and destroyed in the Jordan Valley, and they will go through some of the facts on how Israel uses water as a weapon to force displaced Palestinians from the land, especially in Area C. So I'll be sharing different screens, but I'm going to share with this quickly, this screen quickly with us. This is from OCHA. It's a map of the West Bank, and it's a pretty small and tiny place, but yet complex and complicated. And what do we have in the West Bank? Just take a minute or less to see what do we have in the West Bank. We have movement obstacles such as permanent checkpoints within the West Bank and permanent checkpoints on the green line between the West Bank and Israel. We have road gates are permanently closed, and road gates are sometimes closed and sometimes open. We have earth mud, road blocks. We have 8-meter concrete wall. We have road barriers. We have electric fence connected to the 8-meter concrete wall, because sometimes in some areas Israel cannot build an 8-meter concrete wall because of the geography. They put electric fence. We have closed and restricted areas such as Israeli military bases and Israeli firing zones. This is mostly in the Jordan Valley in the West Bank. We have East Jerusalem, which is supposed to be part of the West Bank, but it is a restricted area for Palestinians in the West Bank. We have Israel natural resource areas, natural areas in the West Bank that we cannot access. We have settlements, we have settler roads in the West Bank as well that is restricted for Palestinians to use. Add into that, let me just go here. In the West Bank, we have around 5.1 million in the West Bank and Gaza. We have around 5.1 million Palestinians, 2 million Palestinians, around 2 million live in Gaza Strip. Around 3.1 million live in the West Bank. That includes East Jerusalem. With this population, it's shocking to know that almost 50% of this population are refugees from 1948, and 50% of this population are actually children under the age of 18. So who live in the Gaza and the West Bank. So we have a lot of children under the age of 18 in these two locations. With that comes the settlers, and we have, as of now, around 633,600 settlers living in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. So in the past 8 months, well, first, Israel took advantage of Trump being in office to really speed their annexations and theft of water and natural resources and land in the West Bank. And they have done a really huge level of annexations, especially in Area C, while Trump was in office. Yet, in the past 8 to 10 months, Israel, as they usually do, they have leashed settlers. Settlers attacks in the West Bank and Palestinians for the past 8 to 10 months have increased dramatically, and most of the attacks are focused on causing road injunctions, damaging properties, throwing stones at Palestinian vehicles, burning a lot of old trees, and kidnapping Palestinians. And this is mostly done by organized extremist settlers and a group called Youth of the Hills. And usually these attacks happen in the West Bank under the protection of the army. As we speak, there is a village that's been destroyed 3 times in the Jordan Valley, and I'm going to show you a 1.5-minute video about a report about it before I start my actual presentation. So I'm going to go. Oh boy, where are we going here? Just a second. All right. Share my screen again.
Few hours after Israeli forces demolished their homes, these Palestinians are rebuilding them. Homs al-Fouqa village in the northern Jordan Valley in the occupied West Bank has been home to dozens of Palestinians who've lived here for decades. Israel declared the area as a military training zone in the 1980s and has been demolishing structures here ever since.
After we rebuild, they come back, take pictures, and demolish the village again. We are tired and haven't slept.
3 months ago, Israeli forces razed the whole village. On Wednesday, they came back and demolished what has been rebuilt.
The children were really scared. We're here. What are we going to do? They keep demolishing our village. This is the 3rd demolition in 3 months.
This is what's left of Hamid Abu Awad's family home. The 6-year-old and his family had to sleep in the open last night. A report by the charity Save the Children says the number of displaced Palestinian children is at a 4-year high. More than 500 children in the West Bank have lost their homes in the last year.
What I've seen is Israel bringing thousands of Jews, building them beautiful houses and swimming pools and giving them all the water of the Jordan Valley. And I see these people here, and they're not the only ones that are not allowed to live their life.
UN reports show Israel destroyed more than 800 Palestinian structures last year. Most were here in the Jordan Valley and in occupied East Jerusalem.
According to human rights organizations, this is a part of a policy to forcibly evict Palestinians. And people here say they have nowhere else to go. Nidal Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank.
Just quickly stop this. Sorry about that. Okay. So, hello again. Just want to make sure that you guys are seeing the screen here. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good. So, as you see quickly in this map and this short report, Israel has been using the same techniques over and over again to force Palestinians to leave their areas, especially in Area C. And let's keep in mind that Area C is 62% of the West Bank, which is fully controlled by Israel. So, and one of the two main methods they use, or three methods they use, is Israeli military training zones and settler attacks and water. Water is a major method and tool that Israel uses to force displaced Palestinians, especially farmers, from their land. So after the occupation of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip in 1967, one of the first steps that Israel did at that time is to control water resources and water infrastructure in the occupied territories. Today, after 53 years, Israel is still controlling Palestinian water and land. So also in 1967, the Israeli Authority issued the order numbered 158 that states that Palestinians are not allowed to install any water infrastructure without a permission from the Israeli Authority, which is nearly impossible to have, And since that time, Palestinians who still live under the Israeli civil and military authorities, mostly in Area C, again, it is 62% of the West Bank, still suffering from this order. They cannot dig cisterns for their farms or houses. They cannot install water pipes, generators, or use the existing wells, which we have a lot of existing wells and springs in the Jordan Valley. And when they do, Israel authorities, guarded by the Israeli soldiers, will come and destroy it and confiscate the equipment. So, but also under the, just to refresh our memory a little bit, under the Oslo Accord that was supposed to be a 5-year interim agreement, Israel was giving 80% of the water from three main aquifers in the West Bank, and Palestinians were supposed to get the remaining 20%. But still, after 25 years later, they did not even get that amount. In the meantime, the population actually of in the West Bank have nearly doubled. This is an image, a slide from the Jordan Valley. Jordan Valley, as an example here, it was at some point one of the main sources of produce and farming land for Palestinians in the West Bank. It was green, full of life, people, animals, and water at the same time. Yet, since I would say the mid-70s or the 70s, many settlers have been moving and occupying the lands. And in order to provide those settlers with water, a number of wells were built on top of the springs in the West Bank. These are Israeli Jewish newly built wells. And because of these wells and the amount of water they take, the vast majority of Palestinians, our farmers, were forced to leave that part of land. I'm going to give you an example about this village. This is a famous village that's been struggling in the Jordan Valley, and their main struggle is the shortage of water. This is Frush Beit Dajan village in the Jordan Valley. Was famous for their high production of citrus since. Hello? That's an echo, sorry. So that was famous for their citrus production, and unfortunately, due to the shortage of water and the theft of water by the Israelis and the Israeli settlers, they have switched to different kind of crops that uses less water. There are, in that village, around that village, there are around 5 wells that owned by Palestinians in that area, full of water for farming, for people, for animal, for life. But since the mid-1995, 2 major settlements were built in that area, Al-Hamra settlements and Mihora settlements. And Israel, since that time, Israel started pumping water from the Palestinian wells, the 5 wells surrounding the Beit Dajan village, into the newly built cisterns and wells to support these 2 settlements that uses water to grow a lot of date trees and crops that uses a lot of water. So, and due to that, due to these policies in the Jordan Valley, this is Bethlehem, residents of the Beit Dajan village. Bethlehem used to own over 800 citrus trees, and now he only own 3 citrus trees around his house, and the reason was for 2 reasons. Was, as he stated once to our group when we visited there, and to many reporters who reported on him, is because when these 2 settlements came, Israel is not only took our own water, it started selling us our own water over $1 per liter. While the
Excuse me, we're only seeing the first slide. We're not seeing any of your slides. I'm still looking at using water as a weapon. There we go.
Is that true?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God, why you guys didn't say anything at the beginning?
I wrote it in chat, but.
Because I'm using a full screen here.
Now we see Mifli, the farmer.
We lost a lot of good pictures and slides in this way.
Now we
See
see
the chat.
Now we see Mifli.
Yeah, I've used a lot of slides. I hope somebody just texted me or said something, because I used to full screen and now I didn't know that it was frozen.
Sorry.
Anyway, I shouldn't listen to anyone to use the full screen. I should have just stick with this from the beginning. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. I've used a lot of great facts and pictures and slides in my presentations that I worked hard on putting together. So I'm sorry that you did not see them. But let's go back to this slide if we can, to start from there. This is Frush Beit Dajan village in the Jordan Valley. At once it was famous for their highly citrus production, but since the 90s, these farmers, and the mid-90s, these farmers have switched to a different crops that uses less water due to the 2 major settlements were built around this village, and this village has 5 main wells that belongs to them. But since these 2 settlements, Al-Hamra settlements and Mihora settlements, were built in the mid-1995 around Beit Dajan, Israel started pumping this water from these 5 wells to feed these settlements. And these settlers, they start using this water to grow a lot of date farms and crops that uses lots of water. Due to these policies, a lot of farmers, Palestinian farmers in Bethlehem village, have suffered a lot with the Israeli policies. This is Mifleh, a Palestinian farmer from the Jordan Valley, from the village. He used to own 800 citrus trees, and now he owns only 3 citrus trees around his house. And when we met him at some point in the past, and as he reported to many organizations, and the reason for that, because when these 2 settlements moved in, Israel started pumping and taking our water to give it to them, but at the same time selling us the water for around $1 or more than $1 per 1 liter of water, while the settlers next door, they buy it for around 60 cents per liter. And for that, Mifleh and other farmers couldn't really sustain the farming land, and they start looking and switching for other businesses and work to support their own family. This is Qais Nasran from the Jivlik village. Jivlik village is also another village nearby in the Jordan Valley. He used to have a land and grow all kinds of produce to sell in the market to support his family. And also he used to use a well, which is, you can see it here in the right slide. This well was built actually in the 1960s when the Jordanian authorities was controlling the West Bank. So it was built in a permission by the Jordanian authorities. And Palestinians, including Qais Nasran, have been using this well for many years, up until Israel came after the 1967 war to control this well and to implement new policies in using the water, and start redirecting the water to other settlements and into inside Israel. And pushed Qais and many farmers to really give up farming their lands. And Qais now, he opened a small grocery store in his village. He quit farming and opened a small grocery store in his village to support his family. Water is, as I said, water and settlements and settlers are main contributors to controlling the Palestinian lives and waters and lands, but also the Israeli army and through their military camps and military zones have controlled a lot of areas in the West Bank, especially in the Jordan Valley. As you see in this map here, the Palestinian control area is in this small page color, and the light yellow color is the Palestinian and Israeli control area. The red areas are the settlements in the Jordan Valley, but look at the pink area. This is Israeli military zones, either Israeli military camps for training or firing zones across the Jordan Valley, where Palestinians, not only from the Jordan Valley, from elsewhere, are restricted to use or enter these areas. These are because military zone areas. With that comes a lot of confiscated of lands, uprooting trees, demolishing houses, and a lot of house demolishing orders been implemented. This information is from the Applied Research Institute, AREJ. It's between 1994 to 2016. It is, we still have like 6 years or 5 years to cover. There's a lot has been done in the West Bank, especially under Trump's time. But you can see how many lands, trees, houses have been destroyed and uprooted in this area as a policy of displacing Palestinians. This slide, I really like using this slide a lot. This is from Visualizing Palestine, and it really, when we just take a few minutes and look at it, it explains to us in a brilliant way the policy that Israel uses to control and distribute water in the West Bank. As it's known, we have a lot of rainfall in Palestine. It's actually the rainfall in Palestine is more than London city, but because much of the aquifers lay down in Area C in the West Bank, which is controlled by Israel, Israel takes 80% of the water and redirect it to Israel and to the Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and it gives Palestinians the 20%. It's actually much less than 20%, but this is how they do it. It's actually, if you have been to Palestine, driving around Area C in the West Bank, you could easily notice these two systems of pipes. One thick, big pipe that's going to the settlements and to Israel, and one small thin pipe that goes to the Palestinian area, but with a switch. Because, for example, I am from Aida Refugee Camp. Water will be pumped to Aida Refugee Camp, especially in the summer, once every 2 weeks, once every month, once every 60 days for between 8 to 12 hours. So this is how much water we usually get in the summer. Why? Because Israel controls that. But as I said, this slide is a bit old, and if we need to get updated, I think the share of water will be, or the Palestinians' percentage will be much less than that, because we need to calculate the number of settlements and settlers that have been added into the West Bank. And as you know, if you add more settlers, you need to take more water to give them, and this will be taken from the Palestinians 20%.
Nidal, can you give us 1 second to look at that in a bigger form? Just a couple of seconds to put it on full screen, and then you can go back to the smaller screen. Is that possible?
I am trying to see how to go to the big screen.
Under present?
Yeah, just a second.
Okay, if it's going to take that, I just thought it would be easier. Sorry.
No. Hopefully, is this working here?
No.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Great, thank you. Oh, then you left it. You put it up and now it's shrunk again. It's all right. Moving on. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I in the last maybe 5 minutes left in this presentation, or 7 minutes, I want to use another example of the how Israel controls lands and water and use it as a weapon to force Palestinians to leave their areas. I'm going to use Al-Walajah village as an example, a village in the West Bank, in the Bethlehem city, but also lies on the border between the West Bank and Israel. That has been suffering by these policies since 1948. So I'm gonna play this video, which is very short.
Al-Walajah is a Palestinian village of about 2,500 people, which now lies in the West Bank near Bethlehem. Before the State of Israel was created, Al-Walajah land extended over 18 square kilometers. 1,800 hectares of fertile land straddled the lush valley fed by many springs. In 1948, following the Israeli War of Independence, the people of Al-Walajah were forced to flee from the Israeli militias across the green line that became the border between Israel and the Jordanian-controlled West Bank. Al-Walajah now has only 6 square kilometers of land, having lost 2/3 of its original area to Israel. During the Six-Day War of 1967, Israel occupied the West Bank, and the people of Al-Walajah have lived under Israeli military occupation ever since. From 1969 onwards, Israel began building the settlements of Gilo and Har Gilo. These 2 settlements today have a combined population of over 40,000 Israeli settlers, and they have begun confiscating Al-Walajah land. In 2002, Israel began building the segregation barrier. Again, Israel has violated international law by building 85% of this on Palestinian land rather than on the Green Line. The barrier already cuts through part of Al-Walajah land. Since Israel occupied Al-Walajah, half of its land has fallen within the Jerusalem municipal boundary, whilst the other half, including people's homes, remains in the West Bank. West Bank Palestinians require a permit to travel into Jerusalem, so all the land north of the boundary is at risk. In the 1990s, the Oslo Agreement carved up the southern end of Al-Walajah into Area B, which includes only the built-up part of the village, and Area C, the agricultural land. Israel was given full control over Area C across the whole of the West Bank. And since Oslo, Israel has forbidden Palestinian construction or development in Area C, whilst expanding its own settlements. The future of Al-Walajah looks bleak. The people see that they will soon be squeezed into an area of only half a square kilometre, surrounded by the 22-foot-high concrete wall or electric fence, with no space for coming generations to develop. Many villages in the West Bank are suffering a similar fate to Al-Walajah.
So again, this is another example of land and water controls by Israel in the West Bank. This is Al-Walajah again, and quickly I just want to explain to you how the water distribution is being done. Okay, these are the Gilo and Har Gilo settlements around Al-Walajah. This is Al-Walajah, what's left from Al-Walajah village. So actually the original village is here in this mountain in 1948. This is the green line here, and this is the train track. So Al-Walajah has a lot of springs and ancient springs, like Ain al-Haniya spring in this area here. And what Israel did actually is they installed a pumping station here inside their territories, and they installed pipes from underground from this pumping station to Al-Walajah to suck and control all the water from here to there. They take 80% to them, and they pump 20% or less to the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority pump the water again to the people of Al-Walajah. Yet this pipe goes through this Har Gilo settlement from Beit Jala, which is part of Bethlehem, to Al-Walajah village here. So first, the settlers in this settlements, they take the water from the 20% of the Palestinians, and the rest go to the people of Al-Walajah. Yet the people of Al-Walajah pays more than $1 per liter, while the settlers pay 60% per liter. So for the people of Al-Walajah to drink their own water beneath their feet here, the water has to travel to this pumping station, all the way to the Palestinian Authority, all the way to this settlements, and then to the Palestinians of Al-Walajah. Yet this pipe that goes through the settlements has a big switch here. So because there's a lot of settlements and the wall and border 48, and there's a lot of high percentage of house demolition in this area, in the area C, which is 80% of the village. A lot of protests usually used to happen in this village. So when people protest the house demolitions, the theft of land and water, the settlers here punish the people by shutting off the switch and releasing sewage water into this area here. And there's a lot of reports and facts and documentations about the Al-Walajah village, and I recommend you that to go and look. The last thing I will say about Al-Walajah, that the plan for Al-Walajah is to be surrounded completely by an 8-meter concrete wall without a gate. Why without a gate? If you go and look at the deal of the century that Trump has set, there's a lot of maps in the documents, and if you look at it, Walajah is actually one of the maps that says they're going to be, and because he proposed there's going to be a lot of tunnels to connect Palestinians areas together. So the plan is to connect the Walajah village by Beit Jala, by Bethlehem, through a tunnel, because the roads will be for the settlers, because the settlers, they don't want to share the roads or see the savages, quote, as they call them, from Al-Walajah village. So the future of Al-Walajah, as well as other areas in the West Bank, is really scary, and this is due to the Israeli policies and annexations that has been happening since the 60s, but also intensified and increased since Trump took office, and Israel still continuing with that. So But I'm gonna close before we go to the questions and answers, and hopefully we can discuss more facts and developments on the ground in the questions and answers. And I see we have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge about this topic, water and water situation in the West Bank, as I hope they can share their participate with us in the discussion. But because of these complications in the West Bank, the loss of lands and the water, there's a lot of great initiatives among Palestinian communities across the West Bank that are happening. So even though the situation right now is really, really difficult, not because of only the Israeli policies, bad economy, unemployment, but also COVID, has making things really, really difficult for Palestinians in the West Bank and more in the Gaza Strip. So I really want to recommend you guys go to 143.org and click onto this link, which is the campaign for the Walk for Water, that to read about the projects around early child education, water, agriculture, and health. And find your way to register and join us in this walk for this year. These are incredible programs that has been running for the past 5 years and reaching a lot of people in Aida and Al-Azraq. And we are also in the process of moving to Balata camp, which is the largest Palestinian refugee camps in the West Bank in terms of population. It has 30,000 refugees in that camp. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I apologize for the first few slides that you guys did not see, but I'm happy to share them somehow. Thank you, Dean. Thank you all. I look forward for more questions and discussions when the time comes.
Nidal, thank you. Thank you. It's just such a devastating reality that is really hard to grasp. But what is not devastating is the beauty of the music of Palestinians, and we're going to hear a little bit more of that, Tarek and Nassim. But first, I want to just show you this basket, which is a collection basket that usually one goes around one side of this auditorium, this lonely auditorium, and this other beautiful basket goes around the other side. We need your help to make this thing keep going. Community Church of Boston. And you can go to our website. Charlie will put up the website and the address in the chat box. Basically communitychurchofboston.org, and we'll take your credit card, or we'll take your PayPal or your checks by mail. And again, we'll listen to one more piece by Tarek and Nassim. This one is called Palestinian Medley. It's an upbeat short medley of Palestinian and Levantine folkloric music and songs played in various musical and cultural events. And then we'll go on to a question and answer period. I look forward to hearing from a lot of wonderful people who are very knowledgeable in Middle East and Palestine affairs, and it's an honor to have you. Let's listen to Tarek and Nassim. No, let's start from the beginning. There we go. Palestinian medley. All I can say, if you can hear me, is thank you, Tarek and Nassim. And I really hope that we can have you live in this auditorium very soon. That was just such a feast, such a treat. You warmed our souls. Let's have some questions. I want to thank. Could you see some video that time by any chance?
Yes, we could.
Good. And I want to thank Yusuf Aboudi, who gave me the suggestion of how to fix that. 2 boxes that you need to optimize video and share video. Not that any of you are in the least bit interested, but slowly we're making baby steps towards figuring out what we really want to figure out, which is how to not only make this a physical congregation when we're done with this COVID thing, but make it a broadcast of radical message and radical spirituality and social action to the planet. Nidal, some questions. Let's see. I'm going to check first in the chat. There are no questions in the chat because I didn't ask people to put them in the chat, but if you'd like to do it that way, go ahead, folks, and I will go scroll through all of the little rectangles and see if there's anybody who has their hand up who would like to ask a question. Let's see. And we have now 29 people participating in the Zoom and probably just as many in the on the YouTube channel. I don't see any questions yet, but meanwhile, let me ask you, Nidal, about the project that I've read about in your emails, which is about hydroponics and growing food. In addition to water just to drink and bathe, you need a lot more water for hydroponics, but you are involved in promoting that with this 1 for 3 project, which I heartily suggest that you all get involved with when we can have a physical walk again. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but we can do a virtual walk again to fundraise for water and agriculture projects.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Well, actually, the one of the main reasons we start thinking about hydroponic, first, this project was built to support 125 patients of hypertension and diabetes. These are patients are members of our Health for Palestine project, another project that we are supporting in Palestine. But also, speaking of water, hydroponic systems in urban areas such as refugee camps overcrowded, and as you know, refugee camps, they don't have the land and they don't have much space around or within, so the only space that left for them is the rooftops, to build rooftop gardens, hydroponic systems, and to be creative in how you're using the system. But hydroponics is amazingly, and actually the person who helped you with figuring out the videos, Yusuf Aboudi, is also our partner in building this project is in Palestine. He is one of the leaders for helping us build this project, as uses around 85 to 90% less water than the traditional way of doing agriculture, and the production of this system is 3 to 4 times higher. So with this 55 square meter that we build in Aida Refugee Camp, it is going to be a source of fresh foods for the patients that are in the Health for Palestine, but also it is going to be as a center for training, for learning. For us, it's a new concept for our culture in Palestine, but also for learning and teaching about the concept of hydroponic in Aida Refugee Camp to train the youth, to train the families, and our 125 patients on how to grow crops through using this system, which takes less space, less water, and higher production. And this is another important point in regards to this project, is that we are not really advocating for canceling the traditional way of doing agriculture, which is a very important area for farmers in Area C. No, the Area C farmers, they need a lot of help and a lot of support to keep going with their lands, because it's an important part of our culture, but also it is their only source of living. We are talking about the urban areas, such as refugee camps. One point to talk about, to add on this project, hydroponic. The past 4 years, I mean, annexation and controlling over land and water in the West Bank has been going on for a while. But the past 4 years, while Trump was in office, Israel took advantage of that to seize and annex a lot of lands in Area C, agricultural lands in Area C. Area C, as you might know, it has laws under the Israeli military and civil authorities. And for Palestinians, in many areas, they used to allow to farm the lands, but they're not allowed to build any infrastructures or houses without a permit, and getting a permit is almost impossible. But while office was in office, Israel started introducing new laws to restrict Palestinian farmers in using their lands, but also decreasing the amount of water that the farmers will take. And for farmers to not have enough water, to not have support, economically, they cannot sustain the land. So many farmers really switched from farming to working in constructions, working in opening small businesses, switching things to survive and support their families. So this pushed the Palestinian market and Palestinians to rely more and more on the Israeli market, which you can get. They get a lot of their produce from Israel, which is low quality but high prices. So this actually, our plan for this hydroponic, as I said, phase 1 is to really learn and teach the concept of hydroponic in these 2 refugee camps, Aida and Al-Azraq. And phase 2 is to start think bigger and building bigger models to really sustain communities and make them autonomous in the use of vegetables, especially vegetables and other kind of crops through the hydroponic.
Nidal, there's several questions in the chat, and a couple of people have their hands up, but let me start with Nancy Murray. Hi, Nancy. Nidal, can you say something about the connections you are making on water issues here and in Palestine, such as in...
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, there's a lot of struggle over water here in the US, and a lot of great work by wonderful movements to confront the system in regards to water shutoff and water contaminations. We have big examples. We have the Native communities, and we have African American communities and areas in the Michigan area like Detroit and Flint. And I want to let me pick one example from Detroit that really you can see how the same system of forced and soft displacement is happening in both places. In the West Bank, Israel uses water to move Palestinians outside of their areas by shutting off the water, destroying infrastructures, and making the water very expensive for the farmers to push them to move out of their lands. And it is working. In Detroit, for example, there's a lot of water shutoff. For example, if you don't have $200, $150, or $90 to pay your water bill, the municipality will come and shut off the water in Detroit. And when people come to your house and shut off the water, you leave. You cannot stay in the house without water. Many families, as a result, left, and immediately the city will move and take the houses, demolish them, and creating new zones to move in more different types of communities, white communities, people who have money into these neighborhoods. And this is a soft and forced displacements using the water as a tool to gentrificate and force people to leave their areas. Another example is Flint. It's a famous example that people has been struggling because of the contaminations and the lead in the water in Flint. our work in the past couple of years over water quality in Bethlehem and Aida Camp, we have found a lot of cases where the E. coli and other bacteria in the water due to the lack of water there. For example, when you shut the water for over a month in the summer in the heat in Palestine, these metal pipes will get rusted and bacteria will grow in them. Okay, so this caused a lot of illness and sickness, especially among children, like diarrhea and fever and other kind of illnesses. And these are cases been documented, especially by Al-Caritas Children's Hospital in Bethlehem. The example of Flint, and actually not only Flint and Detroit, you can see Flint, you can see Detroit, you can see part of Philadelphia, part of Baltimore also struggling, but Flint is a major case in terms of water contaminations due to the old infrastructure there. So the two systems, I would say, of oppression that's been used by the Israelis in the West Bank and by the systems in this area against these communities in the Michigan area are the same. Because both systems originally, many decades, have been designed to work against these communities.
Next from Susan Claw. Hi, Susan. What kind of international censure, if any, has Israel received vis-a-vis theft of water in the West Bank? Did you hear that question, Nidal? Nidal, are you there?
What's happening here?
Can you hear me, Nidal?
Hello?
Can you hear me? I don't
Nidal,
know.
can you hear him?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry. Let me.
Can you hear me now? The next question, Nidal. Are you catching this? Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
What kind of international censure, if any, has Israel received vis-a-vis the theft of water in the West Bank?
That is a great question. First, there's a lot of controversy around Israel policies in the West Bank, but this is one topic that Israel cannot really deny, because the facts on the ground in regards to water thefts is very well documented, not only by Palestinian human rights organizations, international communities, by Israeli human rights organizations. So if you click water situation in Gaza and in the West Bank especially, you can see everybody from Amnesty to the UN to American human rights, Israelis, Palestinians reporting and documenting and proving that Israel is violating all international laws. But as we know, as a Palestinian, as we know, the international law applies everywhere in the world, but not on the Palestine, but not on Israel. Somehow Israel cannot be held responsible by violating international laws and human rights laws in regards to the Palestinians. And I think that's due to a lot of lobby work among politicians and communities in the Western world, not only in the US, but also in Europe. The court, the last decision by the ICC, the International Court, that came lately. If you heard of it, which they are going to start investigating war crimes in Palestine, and this is in Gaza and the West Bank, and this is putting Israel on the edge. Immediately, Netanyahu went out and accused them of being anti-Semitic. Immediately, the Israeli and Zionist lobby in the world, here in the US and in Europe, is campaigning to stop that. Somehow, the international community, if you look at other examples in the world, they force these laws and they force these punishments on other nations who violate them, but not on Israel.
Nidal, next question from Pat Westwater Jung. Hi, Pat. Thanks for this question. It says, I've been to Al-Walaja many times since 2010, but not in a few years. Shirin Al-Araj told me that before 1948, Al-Walaja had more land than any other village in Palestine. It was a farming village of olive and fruit trees, etc. I remember in 2012, the Israeli government donated much of Al-Walaja land in Area C to the youth of Israel as a park. Do you know how much farmland, olive groves, etc. is left? And what is life like there now?
Yeah, well, to answer this question, I will go to this slide here and say, okay, this is Al-Walaja in the red area. This is the old Walaja. This is Walaja in 48. So in 48, Palestinians were forced to leave this hilltop to this hilltop. So it's practically they had like 10 minutes or less walk between these two hilltops. This is 48, this is 67. Yet in the past 2.5 to 3 years, Israel has introduced a lot of laws. First law is Israel decided to build a national park on the land of Al-Walaja here. And when Haaretz reporter asked the mayor of Jerusalem, why are you building this only for Jewish use? Because you're taking all this agricultural lands and you're taking this ancient old spring, Ain al-Haniya spring, and all this land will be restricted for the people of Al-Walaja. And he said, this was the British dream to build a green belt around Jerusalem, and this is part of it. So Israel is building this national park around Al-Walaja, on Al-Walaja land to do that. Yet this area here, almost all of this area is been taken and considering part of Jerusalem under Jerusalem municipality, which means it's part not in the West Bank, it's part of Jerusalem, which Palestinians from Al-Walaja here needs permits to go to their land, which, as we know, it's impossible to get a permit to go to the land. Yet for Israel also, they used to have a main checkpoint here, exactly, that goes to Jerusalem. They moved this checkpoints from here to 2.5 kilometers to here. And by moving these checkpoints permanently, no Palestinians can access the last active, beautiful spring here. And around the spring, next time you go there, you will see what Israel did is they built a big park, water park, for only settlers to use. Yet this area here, the plan is, it's not only the plan, they started the infrastructure is to connect a tunnel between these settlements here to go all the way to Gosh Atzion, and from Gosh Atzion to go all the way to Ma'ali Adumim. And this is part of the Trump deal of the century, which Israel is already started doing it, is to do the greater Jerusalem belt. So as Jerusalem will be connected by Gilo settlements, Har Gilo, Gosh Atzion, Frat, Ma'al Adumim, and then Jerusalem again connected all together. And in this, tremendous amount of Palestinian lands will be taken.
Folks, check out the chat. There's a bunch of information. The next question, if people are interested in witness trips after the pandemic, that would be me. Which ones do you recommend?
Oh, we have actually in our group, if you can allow Nancy, if I don't want to put Nancy Murray on the spot, she organizes one of the best delegation trips through Eyewitness Palestine. So Nancy can add in the chat the information about that. I highly recommend her be part of the delegation that she usually leads. 143 organizes organizes working trip. The trips we organize are small numbers, but professionals. If you go to our website and look at the projects we are running from water, environment, agriculture, health, and early child education, we usually take professionals with us to do actual work there. It be part of projects, but really to learn about the situation in a deep, meaningful way. Got in touch with Nancy Murray, which she's somewhere here in the chat. She can help us with her group.
I want to tell folks there's another place to find out a whole lot about Nidal, and that is at a podcast that I listened to and was just so impressed. It's Krista Tippett's On Being podcast, and Nidal tells me that she and her crew were there, 7 or 8 years ago, and did a full interview with Nidal. And I found out about, back then when Nidal was about 18 years old. No, I don't know, but just about your work with young people and dealing with the trauma that young people go through day to day growing up in the West Bank and Gaza is just, I'm just really in awe of your activism and your witness and your work. Another question. Let's see, there was one about water. What type of water purification, including low-tech and high-tech, are being used or are available or needed?
Well, before we talk about water purifications in the West Bank, we need to keep in mind that water is a political issue. All right. The water contamination in the West Bank is highly related to the lack of water. So if we cannot increase the amount of water, we cannot solve the issue of contamination, really, because the infrastructure in the West Bank, most of the water pipes, especially in refugee camps, were built when the camps were built, and they've never been changed. They're pretty old, rusted things. And when water is not running in these pipes 24 hours, they got rusted, and a lot of contamination happens. We did a lot of job in water regards to water contaminations, which we ran like years of training in using. Sometimes you need to change the water tank because most of the water tanks in the rooftops are metal, and not many people economically can change them. So you need to change them or clean them or use chlorine tablets. Chlorine tablets. Sometimes you need to boil water. If you go and see the work we do on over water, there's a lot of YouTubes on these projects about our work. You can see that. Filtrations is the worst thing. You know, a lot of people are marketing these filtrations to be hooked with the sinks in people's house. Economically, these people cannot do them. They do them at one time, and then they cannot afford to keep replacing them because they're expensive. It is a political issue. Though if everybody needs to spend time in solving this problem, I do believe, I'm a core believer in focusing more on the political system here in the US, because if we manage to shake the political system here in the US in regards to their foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, I think things will be improved in the Middle East.
We're putting some information up on the chat. Nancy Murray, Nidal, this has been such an informative and infuriating presentation. Thank you. One word about the foundation of the Alliance for Water Justice in Palestine. We started it to bring an end to the water partnership that Deval Patrick had forged with Israel, and succeeded in doing so.
Yep, I remember that. I do remember that. And actually, one of the three things that I wanted to add at the end is, you know, the World Water Day is coming, you know, and in March, and the Alliance for Water Justice, in partnership with We the People of Detroit and other native communities, are working on organizing an events and action plans for these things. So stay tuned by updates by the Alliance for Water Justice in Palestine. Also, if you want to be updated actually on the water situation, if you are not on the mailing list of the Alliance for Water Justice, they do send these fact points about the water situations and updates on their mailing list and website. It's a tremendous source keep checking. And but also, because water is a human right for all, there's a lot of initiatives here in the US. Rashida Tlaib is having her campaign, is the Water as a Human Rights Bill. Needs a lot of supports. A lot of communities, Native communities and African American communities having also initiatives that needed to be supported. So it's a collective work, and we should really using this one of the small few benefits of this horrible pandemic is it gave us more time to connect. It gave us the opportunity to hear from the people who are really on the front line struggling with these issues. So it's an opportunity for us to connect and learn and find our way to contribute.
Let me take one last scroll through all of the rectangles up top here and see if so we are coming to a close, folks. This has been just such an amazing and as Nancy Murray says, infuriating and educational picture into water in Palestine, and an amazing visit with someone that I hope we can become more connected with and be in more solidarity with, Nidal Al-Azraq in the 1 for 3 project. It's just really impressive. I want to thank again Tarek Rantisi, Nassim Al-Atrash for that music, and sorry it took a little bit for us to get our act together to show you on video, but we will get there. We will get there. Let's all give one last hand to Nidal.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Appreciate it.
Marilyn's asking that we recognize some of the people on YouTube, or the people on the YouTube chat. Marilyn is first and foremost, and then boy, the other people I don't recognize names, but and Miloslav Nikki. I'm sorry I'm butchering names, but I'm not sure these people want to be recognized, so I won't read any more unless they say they want to be recognized. Do that in the future.
Yeah, sure. Were there any questions or comments from the YouTube live?
Not really.
Okay. Well, Mary Lynn Kramer, thank you for all you do for us as far as just helping us keep on our toes with all kind of things. And so let's just say thank you once more to Nidal. Gonna keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Keep on walking forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. We're gonna show our children courage. Show our children courage. Show our children courage. Never turning back. Never turning back. Thanks everybody, all 30 of you who joined us on the Zoom, and how many more on the YouTube channel. Join us again next Sunday and check out our other programs. If you would like to be on our mailing list, leave your email address in the chat box and I will make sure that you are added to our ever-growing email list, and we will send you our e-newsletter as well. We declare the meeting over. Meeting at the building is over. Thank you, everybody, and you all take care. Charlie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to stay on and figure out how to save the chat. Do you remember how to do that? The three buttons? Save chat. Does that put it like a copy and paste kind of?
Yeah, I think so. You might have to paste it into something.
Okay. So it'll put it on my whatever that's called.
Yeah.
Chat saved.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Layla.
Yep. Take care.
It's nice to see you. You take care, and we'll see you again.
Yes, of course.
Great.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, and thank you, Susan Redlick. And there's Lenny, and there is Alan, and someone named G, who's still with us, and Charlie and Karen and Jim. Thank you, Jim. I've been trying to reach you, and we've played phone tag. But I will call you again as soon as we get off here. All right. So it says that it was saved. So should I just go on a document and try and?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might have even saved it as a document in your downloads or something. I noticed the when you go into the archives on Zoom, that I think the chat is automatically saved there. I'm not 100% sure of that, but we should go back and try if you.
Okay, let's look into that sometime. I'm seeing that the
Ed Pazanis was on YouTube as well.
Ed was, okay, good. He usually comes here, but he didn't come today, but I'm glad he got on the YouTube. I will call him and acknowledge that. And I'm still trying to figure out if it's saved in the archives, why would they have a special place to save it?
That might be for co-hosts or something. I'm not sure.
You know, I just tried to paste what I had saved.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. It had a previous paste. So I don't have any idea where it saved it. It said that it was saved. And I'm going to save it again. Participant can chat with everyone. So it says chat saved, and then it says show in Finder.
Yeah.
Would that be?
You know what the Finder is. I mean.
Yeah, but I don't see anything.
Oh, you open it up.
Would you look in your downloads?
Possibly. Yeah, actually, I've got the whole chat saved here if you need it.
Well, I was mostly an exercise in trying to figure out how to do it. Yes, there's some websites up there that I wanted to look into, and I didn't like write them down.
Yeah. The sleazy way to do it is to if you do a Control A, which chooses everything, and then cut the stuff and copy the stuff. Which is
in other words, just highlight the whole thing and Command C, and then
paste it into a document.
Paste it into something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I just did here. So I've got it.
That's slow. How do I do the whole thing all at once? onefor3.org.
If you do the Control A, it highlights. It's not obvious, but it highlights everything in the chat.
I see. Control Is that on a PC and a Mac?
I
Command control?
Boy, this is where there is a control key on the Mac, right?
Yeah, there's one that says control.
And if you do control and A, does it highlight first of all, put the cursor in the chat.
Okay, I just pasted the chat on somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah, that worked, just to highlight everything, and then yeah, highlight everything and then just copy and paste it. All right, that was helpful. And did you see what my problem was with the video that wasn't showing?
I heard you say that it was I was suspicious. I mean, I tried to look into that, but we were out of time just before we started. I was saying
yeah. Now I can't even find it. I've got to go in the chat again and see what it was he said to do. This guy.
If you go to
if Abudi said share, when you go to share screen and check, there's two boxes below: optimized video and shared video. So it's on the share screen page. There it is. Optimize for video clip and share sound when you share screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know if Nidal did that. Did you notice that the video that he showed was kind of jerky?
Yeah, it was. And it was funny. It seemed like the drum player was better than the was it oud or the string instrument player?
Yes, that's right. It was different, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna share screen again and see if we can. These are optimized. How does that look on your end?
It looks better than it did before. Yeah.
Is it jerky?
I can detect slight jerkiness in it, but it was very jerky before.
It was jerky even after I had pushed those two buttons, because without pushing the buttons, we were getting no video whatsoever.
When you did get the video during the service, it was jerkier than it was right now.
So it's less jerky now.
Yeah.
Well, go figure. I don't know. I didn't do anything different. I mean, I pushed those two buttons on the share screen, and then we were able to see the video for the first time.
Yeah.
But I haven't done anything different since then.
Yeah. Are you hardwired?
I'm hardwired. I've been hardwired the whole time.
Okay.
These are things that we'll need to try to be more polished on when we have two different events coming up that have a lot of this kind of stuff.
Try playing one of the videos that you couldn't play before, just to make sure.
Yeah, sure. So you're thinking it might just be
no, I just want to make sure.
One video versus. Let me see. I'm going to find. Let's look up Sabai Bharati. Start playing that one.
Oh, you might want to end the YouTube.